Good morning. I'm Dagen McDowell in from Maria Bartiromo. It's Friday, August 31st. Your top stories at 8 a.m. Eastern. The pressure is on. President Trump reportedly ready to hit China with another round of tariffs next week. This on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. This on top of the $50 billion that we've already slapped with tariffs. Meantime, today is the deadline for a trade deal with Canada. The president thinks the deal will happen, but is ready either way.
We'll see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, we'll put tariffs on the cars coming in from Canada, and that'll be even better. So, but I think it's going to happen, and we've really developed a very good relationship. Look, we love Canada, but they have to treat us fairly. They haven't treated us fairly.
Trade tensions hitting futures this morning, a 62-point loss on the Dow futures. We were having a record-breaking run at the beginning of the week as that Mexico trade deal came together. We were making headway with Canada. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Russell 2000 hit one record after another earlier in the week. But yesterday, if you look at this chart of the Dow, when that news broke, that headline crossed $200 billion worth of Chinese goods will be hit with tariffs next week. You saw the market sell off. So again, the elephant in the room, the big worry is China, China being our largest trading partner. The Dow yesterday closing down 137 points. But so far this month, the Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, all of your major market gauges, major winners. The NASDAQ, the biggest winner with a gain of almost 5.5%, the best August for the NASDAQ in what, 18 years. In Europe, we have losses across the board to tell you about. The biggest loser, the French market, down more than 1%. And Asian markets mostly lower in overnight trading. Those markets wrapping up the month of August. Kospi in South Korea did manage to eke out a small gain this Friday of 0.2%. Take down of technology. The president renewing his attacks against technology giants. We have the fallout. And burger boycott. In-N-Out facing backlash from some Democrats over the company's political contributions to Republicans. But it backfired. Because guess what? The company gives to both Republicans and Democrats, and people, regardless of who they vote for, they love some In-N-Out burger. And more musings from Musk, the Tesla chief, in another Twitter tussle, calling it the best PR he's ever had. You will not believe who he's getting into a twit spat with. And tapping to type, one company says it can replace a keyboard and a mouse with this. We've got the inventors of this tap strap later this hour. Here to break it all down, Fox News contributor, National Review reporter Katherine Timpf, Third 7 Advisors chief market strategist Michael Block, Fox News contributor and radio talk show host Richard Fowler. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So
great to be here.
Yep.
I just got to bring this up. I'm looking at Twitter, and W. Kamau Bell, who does do a nice little show on another network, is complaining about the GOP support from In-N-Out Burger. Kamau, tune in. We're giving you the whole story here. Come on, love your show. You gotta love this show. We got the whole story. Come on in.
I don't even know who that is. So again, it shows you again, and In-N-Out Burger does incredible charity work. They have since the 1980s, and don't start a boycott of something that everyone loves, because again, you're overplaying your hand.
Just do your research and know that they give to both parties.
Thank you, Richard Fowler.
Now, smart guy. Come on.
Joining the conversation this morning, the coming collapse of China author Gordon Chang, B. Riley Financial chief market strategist Art Hogan, the host of Varney and Company, Mr. Stuart Varney. You do not want to miss any of what we have coming up. But to our top story this hour, President Trump reportedly planning to move ahead with tariffs on $200 billion worth of goods coming out of China next week. The threat comes ahead of today's looming deadline to strike a trade deal with Canada. Blake Burman is at the White House to break it all down. Good morning, Blake.
Hi there, Dagen. Good morning to you. The important date here is September 5th. That is next Wednesday. That is important because that's when the public comment period ends for this potential next batch of $200 billion worth of sanctions potentially going toward China's way. Here's what we are told from people all across this White House. First off, the president has discussed, we are told, the possibility of extending these $200 billion worth of tariffs against China. But we're also told that no firm decision has necessarily been made as of this point, and we've also been cautioned that there is potentially a lot of room to run between now and September 5th, or now and what might ever happen after September 5th. Meantime, there is a deadline in the much nearer term, and that is today, this afternoon, or this evening, as it relates with Canada and potentially striking a new trade agreement with them. Negotiators, including Canada's foreign minister, have been behind closed doors for days now trying to hammer out a deal. But so far, there's a sense of optimism, but no firm commitments. At a campaign rally last night in Indiana, the president expressed that optimism while also reiterating this warning right here. Watch.
We'll see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, we'll put tariffs on the cars coming in from Canada, and that'll be even better. But I think it's going to happen, and we've really developed a very good relationship.
In an interview yesterday with Bloomberg, the president continued to show off his long list of trade grievances, at one point saying of the World Trade Organization the following, quote, "If they don't shape up, I would withdraw from the WTO." Dagen, he also confirmed our report yesterday, which is that as it relates to the European Union and potentially lowering auto tariffs down to zero, the president told Bloomberg that he has rejected a deal. We're told that the president does not see that as a standalone issue. Dagen?
Thank you, Blake Burman at the White House for us. Here now, Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, China now pushing back today, saying renewed pressure will not work. Are they ready for a long trade war? Because, again, this $200 billion that was talked about yesterday, this was not new. It didn't come out of the blue. The White House, quite frankly, has telegraphed that very quickly, that it would be $50 billion initially and then maybe another $200 billion. What do you make of it?
Well, certainly China is not prepared for a long-term struggle with the United States. And the Chinese know that. The only way they can win this trade war is if they bluff President Trump down. And by the way, it's not really a trade war now, it's a tech war, because we're talking about tariffs that are imposed under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 to remedy China's theft of U.S. intellectual property. That theft runs in the hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And if you don't like the tariffs, China, then just stop stealing our stuff.
What are you looking for in terms of how American companies, manufacturers deal with the increased tariffs? Because I've listened to or gone back and listened to a lot of conference calls from these retailers, and maybe the impact is not as grave as some people might think, because a lot of these companies, major discount retailers, they have pretty diverse manufacturing bases. It's not like that every product that, say, a discounter sells is going to go up 25% automatically.
Clearly not. If you were to go to a Walmart 10, 12 years ago, you would see that of their house brands and garments, 90% or more were made in China. You do the same thing today. Look at George, their house brand. It's about the reverse. It's about 90% elsewhere. And so supply chains can move. The only company that really can't move its supply chain quickly is Apple, because of Foxconn. But Foxconn will, if there are the pressures, Foxconn will move elsewhere, as they moved into China. They started in Taiwan. They moved to China. They can move out of China. But Apple does have a real problem. And the other thing that I'd be worried about would be the pharmaceuticals, because they've located a lot of their manufacturing to China.
Gordon, I look at this situation, and markets don't seem to care that much. It'll sell off past couple of days, but overall, we're right near all-time highs in U.S. stock markets. What's the real message here? Because I'm hearing about this, and it just seems like, for lack of a better way to put it, the U.S., President Trump have hand here. They really have a lot more leverage. It looks like what's going on here with these tariffs is going to hurt China a lot more than it's hurting the U.S., both in terms of manufacturers and consumers. What are we missing here? You mentioned the intellectual property and things like that, but it seems like China's been getting away with that for a long time. Is there really recourse against that? What leverage does China really have here?
Well, the leverage that China has, because first of all, they don't have the leverage on the tariffs. I mean, last year we imported $505 billion from China. We only exported 130 or so, which means that they're going to run out of bullets. The only leverage they really have is to hold U.S. companies like
Apple.
hostage. And that is really what they're going to do. But, you know, a lot of Chinese officials really think that's a bad idea for China, because really what it means is that the European companies, the Japanese, the South Koreans, and, you know, everybody else, they're not going to want to put their companies into China in the future. And I think you're going to see foreign direct investment into China really decline precipitously, largely because, you know, people don't want to be subject to intimidation.
I do want to point this out, though, that there's a lot that goes on within China in terms of misinformation campaigns out of the Chinese government about American companies. You've seen this time and again to try and drive business away from companies that are already doing business there. There's a lot that this centrally controlled government does, not just stealing intellectual property, but really trying to hammer American businesses when we get in a fight with China.
Yeah, and Apple has actually been a victim of that in March 2013, and very recently they're now starting to say, look, you know, Apple, if you want to stay in China, you're going to have to give more to us, which is really extortion. But they've really focused in on Tim Cook's company.
So, Gordon, a question for you. I mean, so we don't look at just trade in a vacuum. It seems as though that China, they're also a player in how we deal with the Korean Peninsula, and they are now starting to tinker with that because of this looming trade war. What's the implications of that in the long term for the market, and what's the implications militarily? Yeah,
if you go look at President Trump's tweet of last Friday, even the tweet of Wednesday, he puts the two together. He says our policies on trade are actually affecting China's attitudes towards us on North Korea. Actually, I don't believe it. I don't think President Trump should blame his policies. And the reason is China has been villain for decades on North Korea. They've been a villain for decades on trade. So, you know, basically they might have, you know, what President Trump does might have a marginal effect on Beijing's reaction. But long term, you look at what the Chinese are doing on both issues, I don't think that President Trump's tariffs are having much of an effect on their.
And how about the military spending?
Well, China's
Navy spending.
Oh, there's a tremendous amount there, and the question is, why are they doing this? They want to do it because they want to take territory from their neighbors. They want to close off the global commons. This puts them into opposition with everybody else, including the United States. This is a very bad story for Beijing long term.
When we started this conversation about what's going on with trade, tariffs, and the White House, even Steve Forbes was on this show saying we should have and need to lock arms with all of our allies and take on China as a united front, from Japan to Canada and Mexico. And that was the disturbing thing about the steel and aluminum tariffs to begin with. However, we should point out, deal with Mexico, it's a handshake deal. Negotiations with Canada, that's why we are watching this renegotiation of NAFTA so closely. And there was just a report out in the Globe and Mail newspaper in Canada with this headline: Canada government officials said to doubt NAFTA deal Friday. So it is a deadline. It is an arbitrary deadline, according to some, set by the White House. But that's why, not just in terms of the United States economy and our trade with these allies, that's why it's so important to make sure that we get everybody on our side and we can take on China.
That's absolutely critical, Dagen, and you're 100% right on that. And that's why the sort of the handshake with Europe at the end of July, that was a good thing, because really what happened there was, for instance, you take soybeans. Everyone talks about soybeans. The Europeans agreed to buy more soybeans, which is a message to China, is like, don't mess with American soybean farmers, because we won't sell to you, China, but we will sell to the Europeans.
Gordon, it's great to see you.
Thanks, Dagen.
Gordon Chang with us. Coming up, a Twitter tussle for Elon Musk, the latest controversy for the Tesla CEO, and a burger boycott. Some California Democrats are speaking out after In-N-Out Burger donates to Republicans. But they didn't just donate to Republicans. Will the move bite those Dems? Memorial services for the late Senator John McCain getting underway in Washington this morning. Cheryl Casone has the details. Cheryl?
No, that's right. McCain is going to lie in state at the Capitol Rotunda today. Yesterday, former Vice President Joe Biden delivered a tearful remembrance of his close friend at McCain's memorial service in Phoenix.
Now John's going to take his rightful place in a long line of extraordinary leaders in this nation's history, who in their time and in their way stood for freedom and stood for liberty, and have made the American story the most improbable and the most hopeful and the most enduring story on earth.
Well, McCain's flag-draped casket arrived at Joint Base Andrews outside of D.C. late last night. Longtime congressional colleagues and mourning citizens are going to be able to pay their respects between 1 and 8 p.m. Well, now to Detroit. It promises to be a funeral that is fit for a queen. A 6-hour invitation-only service for Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, is set for 10 a.m. this morning in Franklin's hometown. And the stars are going to be out to honor her. The long list of big-name performers includes Ariana Grande, Stevie Wonder, Jennifer Hudson, and Faith Hill. More than 30 artists paid tribute to Aretha Franklin last night in the Motor City during a nearly 5-hour concert that celebrated her life and her legacy in music. Franklin died just over 2 weeks ago of pancreatic cancer at the age of 76. Well, Coca-Cola is looking to inject some caffeine into its portfolio. The company's buying British coffee chain Costa for $5.1 billion from Britain's Whitbread. Costa is the world's second largest coffee chain behind Starbucks. Coca-Cola shares are higher in the pre-market on the heels of this news, up a little bit more than 0.5%. And then funds run by BlackRock voted in favor of a proposal that would have required Tesla to replace Elon Musk with an independent chairman. The proposal, which was defeated, would not have affected Musk's standing as Tesla's chief executive officer. Meanwhile, Musk is welcoming the criticism of Steve Bannon, who called him, quote, an immature man-child on Twitter. Well, Musk tweeted back, can Steve Bannon please insult me some more? Best PR I've had in a while. Musk recently backtracked on a plan to take Tesla private, which has ignited scrutiny from the SEC and obviously isn't, causing problems with the board, to say the least.
Elon Musk shouldn't take the bait, though, Cheryl. Again, this is what people whose relevancy is in decline often will tweet about someone who is more famous, who gets more attention, in order to have their name uttered on television shows.
Yeah. Well, it worked. There you go.
It definitely works.
It definitely works.
Can I just say that the funeral for Aretha Franklin's today, and she's literally going out as a queen. Costume changes during your viewing. Best I've seen.
I was reading your mind. I was reading your mind. That is one of the most joyous moments I've seen all week, as we celebrate the life of Senator John McCain.
She went from a red outfit on the first day of the viewing with red shoes, red Manolo Blahniks, to the second day having a blue outfit with blue shoes.
I'm going to have to do that with my funeral. Going to have a lot of costume changes.
Listen,
multiple.
I don't know if I should share this, but it's, when and I have sat down with my mother and gone over her funeral arrangements, and it actually is a way to make sure that someone's life is celebrated in the way that they want it, and it takes the pressure off of the family to have to deal with the arrangements. So,
a queen in life and a queen in death.
Oh my gosh, it is all about Stevie Wonder, though. Don't you dare put Ariana Grande's name before Stevie Wonder ever again. It's all about
maybe.
No, just Stevie. All you need to say is Stevie Wonder's going to be performing.
I agree.
Thank you. Coming up, slamming Silicon Valley, President Trump's war of words against Google, Facebook, and Twitter next. And rethinking the traditional keyboard, we check out the new device that lets you type on the go.
Like a rhinestone cowboy, riding out on a horse in a star-spangled rodeo.
Markets tense about trade. Yesterday, the Dow fell 137 points, and it really sold off as those headlines started to cross that President Trump was going to slap $200 billion in additional imports from China with tariffs. If you look at this at the chart yesterday, you can see how that hit stocks. But again, we're on track to wrap up what has been an incredible month. It was a good day for Amazon. Shares of Amazon soaring above $2,000 a share yesterday, a major milestone in its climb to match Apple's $1 trillion market value. Joining us now, Art Hogan, B. Riley Financial Chief Market Strategist. Going into the fall, Art, what are you watching?
It's interesting. Unfortunately, we're going to be held hostage to conversation around trade. So the good news is it feels like that's getting better in North America. Clearly good news around Mexico and getting the frameworks of that deal done. Feels like Canada really wants to join that party, and that probably happens today at some point in time. Not sure if escalation with the Eurozone is real or just more negotiation, but China's the long midterm play, and that news has to get worse before it gets better. So as you mentioned, the White House is going back to that finding $200 billion with additional imports to put tariffs on, and that's going to get heated up. I just think China could play a long game in this, and obviously we know what the end game is, but it's just not going to happen, I don't think, before the midterm elections.
Hey, Art, Mike Block here. So we're here talking about trade and how enthusiasm and optimism on trade has driven markets. And yet this week, Dagen was just talking about Amazon. We've seen these so-called FANG stocks, especially Amazon, Apple, and Alphabet, leading the charge higher. It just feels like there's this low liquidity, late August, momentum-driven rally. What kind of legs does that have, given the catalyst or lack thereof is coming? What are you thinking here?
Hey, Mike. So, yeah, great question. I think that some of it's interesting. So you've got two different trades going on right now, or three, really. So you've got the trade darlings, right? So the poster children for trade, like the large cap industrials, Boeing, Cat, Deere, that all get hammered when there's negative news around trade, right? You've got the trade agnostic group, which is the group you just talked about, really feeling like they don't adversely get affected necessarily by trade, although Apple might come into that at some point in China. And then you've got all the retailers in the last 2 weeks that have reported, and you've really had the good and the bad there. There's been some amazing, great stories like Lululemon overnight that have done well in the consumer land, and then there's been those stories that where the business model's just not working, and those names have gotten tattooed. So to your point, and what otherwise quiet summer trading, we've seen three different groups that have significantly shown some volume and some activity. And unfortunately, as trade continues to dominate headlines in September, I think we're going to see ongoing pressure, not just on the multinationals, but also on the emerging markets, because the further we get into trade conversations and the more antagonistic it gets, the stronger the dollar gets and the worse off emerging markets get.
Yeah, but as strong as the consumer is, Art, I still got to buy stuff for the holidays, so...
Well, Art made the point about Lululemon, Dagen. But I'll point out yesterday and this morning we've seen Dollar General, Dollar Tree, and then also Big Lots this morning on the low end of retail, not doing so great.
Art, final word.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just happy to see there are winners in a world where we thought Amazon had killed everybody. So I think the consumer is certainly not dead. That rumor has been exaggerated, and I think we're going to have a great holiday shopping season. We had a very good back-to-school shopping season, so I think the consumer's doing great.
Yeah, I was never feasting to that buffet that Amazon was somehow going to put every major retailer out of business, and they've clearly figured out how to do online and in-store very well, like Walmart or Target. Art, thank you so much. Art Hogan.
You bet.
Coming up, some Democrats bring in the beef. The details after In-N-Out Burger donates to Republicans. What's the real story? We'll tell you about it. And as we get to break, check out British Prime Minister Theresa May dancing on a trip to Africa. This has gone viral. Just listen and think of Elaine Bennis. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Dagen McDowell in for Maria Bartiromo. It's Friday, August 31st. Your top stories at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. The heat is on. President Trump reportedly ready to hit China with an additional $200 billion of tariffs. It's tariffs on $200 billion worth of goods. That could happen next week. The news shook the markets yesterday. You can see it looking at this chart of the Dow exactly when that news hit. Investors rattled. Meantime, reports coming out this morning that Canada is doubting if a trade deal with the U.S. can be reached by today's deadline. The stumbling blocks are how you resolve disputes between the two countries. Will it stay as it is with panels, tribunals, if you will, and also opening up Canada's dairy market for U.S. dairy products? Those are the two main issues. We watched the futures this morning, 56-point loss on the Dow futures. In Europe, it was selling across the board as well as Europe moves closer to wrapping up its final trading day of the month. We have losses on England, France, and Germany, down 1%. And then looking at Asia overnight, all of the markets there were lower except South Korea. There you go. Moving on, Trump versus technology. The president putting social media and Google on notice at a rally last night in Indiana.
Very importantly, my administration is also standing up for the free speech rights of all Americans. You look at Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media giants. And I've made it clear that we as a country cannot tolerate political censorship, blacklisting, and rigged search results.
President Trump has accused Google of rigging its search results, social media of censoring conservative voices. And then burger boycott, In-N-Out facing backlash from liberals over the company's political contributions by Republicans, but it's backfiring. To quote the Los Angeles Times, In-N-Out is as beloved as the Golden Gate Bridge in California. And then stocks to watch, Big Lots tanking as the company missed estimates, but Lululemon taking off, raising guidance. Lululemon shares up almost 11%. We'll look behind the numbers in just a few minutes. And throwing out the keyboard, one company says the future is tapping to type. We've got the investors of the chat strap later this hour. Hey there. And to our top story this half hour, President Trump slamming social media bias last night at his Evansville rally.
You look at Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media giants, and I've made it clear that we as a country cannot tolerate political censorship, blacklisting, and rigged search results. And you know, it can go the other way also. We will not let large corporations silence conservative voices. We're not going to let them control what we can and cannot see, read, and learn from. We can't do that.
This as Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey and Facebook Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg are set to testify next week on Capitol Hill. Maria Bartiromo breaking that news for you last week, even earlier, about Jack Dorsey testifying. Joining me now to discuss, Republican strategist Bryan Lanza and Democratic strategist Adrienne Elrod. Bryan, to you first. Is this just this is, as Ari Fleischer was saying yesterday, this is high heat right for the base. It doesn't really matter unless Congress and the White House steps up to regulate these businesses. What do you say?
You know, listen, I think being for censorship is very anti-American, and we see it in college campuses, and now we're seeing it on social media platforms. Why is the left so afraid of free speech? It's probably because of the things that the Republicans have to say, matter because it's common sense. I mean, let the speech take place, whether it's on campuses or on social media. Should the government step in? It's a large enough platform. They shouldn't censor Americans. It's just not what we do here.
Adrienne, what do you say? Because again, there is plenty of evidence that social media platforms have tried to suppress conservative speech, or they don't treat conservative speech the way that they treat the speech of people who are like the very people who work in these technology companies.
Well, I agree with Ari Fleischer on this. This is simply another way for Trump to rally the base. I mean, this is, first he goes after the free press, and now he's going after the free internet. This is also a president who has made it very clear that he's trying to get rid of regulations instead of trying to put more regulations out there. So, again, I think it's a way for him to rally his base. Google and other tech companies maintain that there is certainly no censorship, that they base the search results on algorithms that have nothing to do with political bias. So, again, we'll see what happens next week when Sheryl Sandberg and Jack Dorsey testify. But, again, I think this is just another tactic for Trump to try to rally the base against the media and now against Silicon Valley.
Lady, and I'll give final word on that, Bryan, but I want to move on to this other topic. Continue.
It's not rallying the base when you're fighting and defending free speech, when you're against censorship. That's rallying America. That's who we are. That's what we believe in. Now, what does the left have? Why is the left so offended by free speech and open dialogue? Probably because they can't defend their own positions, whether it's on university campuses or on social media. Who knows where it's going to be next? The workplace? This needs to stop.
Yeah, but Bryan, to be clear, though, the president has hammered many publications and many newspapers. So,
and they've deserved it.
But then the left, people on the left, or the people who work at these publications, are worried. They feel like that, when you call the members of the press the enemy of the people, there's a problem in that. You're not standing up for the First Amendment.
You know, the First Amendment is many things, and you are saying it for the First Amendment when you're against censorship. You know, him being critical of the media, you know, the media is not free of criticism. They've done a lot wrong here. Just look at the recent CNN story with Carl Bernstein. Now they only do one sources. The media is complicit in a lot of these problems that the president's criticizing.
Well, I want to move on to this, because there's a new beef for the Democratic Party, or at least some people who are Democrats out in California. Some folks are up in arms because the hamburger chain In-N-Out Burger donated $25,000 to the California Republican Party. And California Democratic Party Chairman Eric Bauman said this on Twitter to start the firestorm. At two In-N-Out, tens of thousands of dollars donated to the California Republican Party. It's time to hashtag boycott In-N-Out. Let Trump and his cronies support these creeps, perhaps animal style. Now, Adrienne, we've had a response from In-N-Out. I mentioned the Los Angeles Times article. In-N-Out gives to both parties equally. They do incredible amounts of work for charity through the In-N-Out Foundation. This just seems like overplaying your hand when you try to boycott something that everybody loves.
Yeah, look, Dagen, I'm going to completely agree with you on this. I mean, first of all, I'm a huge fan of In-N-Out Burger. It's the first thing that I do when I fly into LAX. I go straight to In-N-Out, grab a burger.
So does Richard.
Take it on the road.
Fowler does too.
I do too.
So I will not, as a Democrat, I will not be boycotting In-N-Out Burger. Look, I know Eric Bauman. He's a fantastic Democratic operative in California, but I think this is going a little too far. And by the way, In-N-Out Burger has a lot of fans, and that transcends political party affiliation. So I don't think this tactic is going to work. As you mentioned, In-N-Out Burger does a lot of charity work. They're a very philanthropic company, and I don't see this having really any sort of effect.
But, Bryan, people have pointed out, even on Twitter, the company has a reputation. It was founded in 1948, has a reputation for maintaining strong Christian beliefs, and it puts references to Bible verses in its packaging. So, again, I think that the outrage is... Again, this is what I talk about when I say manufactured outrage, that people have to look, and it's not symmetrical with what has been done, and people are sick of it. And it will stop working, and this In-N-Out Burger boycott is an example of that, where you overplay your hand, and your people who should maybe support you if you're a Democrat, they stop listening to you.
I mean, I'm a Californian. I love In-N-Out. I think if the voters of California have to choose between the Democratic Party and In-N-Out, they're going to choose In-N-Out. I think, you know, I know Eric myself, having worked against him in several campaigns. I know him to be somewhat reasonable most of the time, but his tactics today are very much a bully, and it's just unacceptable. In-N-Out is entitled to have a voice in this debate. They've chosen to give the Republicans in the past. They've chosen to give the Democrats. What Eric is trying to do is stifle their voice. This goes back to the left trying to silence voices on the right. What is wrong with free speech?
The company made equal contributions to both Democratic and Republican political action committees in California in 2018. So they're playing both sides of the aisle, and you know what? That's not why people love them. The food is delicious, and I don't even eat meat anymore, and I have fond memories of In-N-Out in California. Right. Again, you're picking a fight where there doesn't need to be one. Thank you, Bryan, Lanza, Adrienne, Elrod. Great to see you both.
You too.
Coming up, Warren Buffett speaking out, Stuart Varney weighing in. That will be next. Plus, Lululemon shares soaring following better than expected earnings. We break down those numbers ahead.
I'm Gerri Willis, live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. We've got big earnings misses and gains today. Take a listen. Big Lots, the middle income retailer, missing its numbers, 59 cents a share versus 67. The company's shares poised to open 6.6% lower. Flip side of the coin, Lululemon, a big earnings beat. Take a look at this. Stock will open at a new high, up 10.5%. Possibly online sales were fueling that beat. It should open at a record high. And a fun story for mom and dad. You're sending those kids to Disneyland on the West Coast to the new Galaxy's Edge next summer. Guess what? You'll be able to get a drink there. That's right, they're opening Hogan's Cantina as part of this new Star Wars franchise. This hasn't happened in 63 years. The reality is that Walt Disney himself never wanted to have alcohol on the premises. He said it wasn't wholesome, but this is pretty exciting stuff. The Planet Batu, that's where this thing will be set. Take a look. That's from the movie itself. And as I send it back to you, Dagen, I just want to give you a quote from Star Wars. See if you remember this one. You will pay for your lack of vision, young Jedi. Yeah?
Gerri.
Darth Vader, right?
Gerri, you just... Gerri.
You should play Darth Vader in the next movie. That was so good.
Gerri, happy Labor Day.
Gerri, you just made my day. You made all of our day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Legendary investor Berkshire Hathaway CEO Warren Buffett sounding off on the possibility of Apple investing in Tesla in an interview with Fox Business.
I think it would be a very poor idea to get into the auto business. It's not an easy business.
Joining me now, the host of Varney and Company, Stuart Varney. Mr. Varney.
I guess that puts the kibosh on any idea that Apple might buy Tesla, because Warren Buffett has $56 billion worth of Apple stock. He has some input, is also the most successful investor, I think, in history. So what he says means something. I guess Apple is not going to be buying Tesla. That had been the speculation. After all, Tesla's in great financial trouble. They need money. They're going to need money in the future. They're looking for a partner, maybe looking for a buyout deal, and it's not going to come from Apple, even though Apple's got all this money. So that settles that. I wonder if Tesla can keep at the $300 per share mark with that as the news background. I see Apple going further up. I guess investors didn't want them to buy Tesla in the first place. So that's the state of play this morning. Actually, Dagen, I was rather hoping that Gerri would imitate a British accent, and let's see how that went down. But I don't think that's going to happen.
You know what I'm not going to do? A British accent.
Don't. And I won't do your accent either, okay?
No, because I sound like, when you do Southern, you sound like John Wayne.
Oh, okay. I'll take that. Pilgrim.
Exactly, Stuart. I can't wait to watch your show coming up. Can I ask you, can I just spring one on you real quick?
Go.
This In-N-Out burger controversy.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
I'm going to editorialize on that. I think it's craziness. The story is that In-N-Out Burger gave some money to the Republican Party and for pro-business groups. The Democrats found out about it and said, let's boycott In-N-Out Burger. That is pure nonsense, and it displays the hostility of California Democrats to business. Furthermore, In-N-Out Burger has Bible verses on its packaging. Oh, you can't have that. Oh, no, but a boycott, man. Oh, the dangers of Christianity. What a laugh. I'm going to editorialize at 10 o'clock on that.
I cannot, or at 10 a.m. Well, you start at 9 a.m., and that is almost 9 minutes from now. Mr. Varney, thank you. Stuart Varney. Straight out of a sci-fi film, we check out the high-tech device that lets you type on the go. Next. People have been typing the same way for more than 200 years. Typewriters and then to cell phones. The keyboard reigns supreme as the way to get your words out. Now one company plans to change the way, well, the keyboard exists. TapStrap. It's a wearable keyboard that lets you tap out what you want to write. Joining me now are the founders, Dovid, Schick, and Sabrina, Kemeny. Great to see you both. You just got to show us, Dovid, how this works.
Great. So as you said, it's a wearable keyboard, and it allows me to type just by touching anything with my fingers. And unlike any keyboard that you've ever seen, instead of having an arrangement of keys that I have to aim for, I can just select which fingers I want to use. And
he's getting messages. It was from a family member. No, I'm just kidding.
It probably was. All right. So let me just demonstrate what I mean. So let's say I want to say. Tapping is
so we're watching on the
fun and easy. Okay, And let's say I wanted to have a special character like this and make that.
So is it like just the way that the gesture, is it based on hand gesture?
Right, so different finger combinations represent different letters. So for instance, if I tap my index finger, I will send an E to any device that's connected via Bluetooth to my tap strap. So different, or these two fingers are an N.
They're watching. That's why they keep texting. That's why they keep. Oh my goodness, no. That's why they keep texting. So tell us how much it costs and where it's available, guys.
So it costs $179 US. It's available on Amazon and it's available on our website, which is tapwithus.com.
And Sabrina, how have sales been so far?
They've been really good. It's been very exciting watching them grow. So
that's incredible. When did you found the company? How long ago?
It's about 3 years ago, and it did take us a while to go through quite a few prototypes till we perfected it and got something that's incredibly accurate and precise. And this also has a built-in mouse, so it's gone through some iterations to come to this point. So it was 1995, and
we love you guys. Thank you so much,
right,
Sabrina and Dovid. Thank you so much for being here. TAP. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Varney, go.
Okay. Good morning, Dagen.
I love you, Stuart. Bye.
Good morning, everyone. Deadline day for Canada. The president says get on board with a trade deal or we'll hit you with tariffs. Oh, Canada's in a tough spot here. They need us more than we need them.